The second quarter came in below estimates of 240,000 jobs for April. The workforce saw 175,000 jobs created. The overall unemployment rate increased by 0.1 of a percentage point. Some good news for African Americans. The overall unemployment rate dropped as it did for both Black men and women. Morgan Harper from the American Economic Liberties Project is here to break down these numbers. Well, Morgan, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Usually I'm on the panel talking to you, but now I'm guest hosting for Roland. So put in perspective.
You're the host now.
Well, well, Beyonce said she was going to upgrade me, so I guess this is it. But,
I mean, that's good. Congrats.
But put in perspective for us what these numbers mean and why did we see the unemployment rate for African-American men and women go down April 2024?
Yeah, this was interesting. So, the overall number, as you said, was lower than estimated at 175,000. But I do think it's important to keep in mind that the numbers we've been seeing for the few months I've been on the show talking of 200,000, that's very high. That's not normal. And so still having 175,000 jobs created is a good thing. Now, in terms of the unemployment rate, this is interesting to see this divergence between the overall unemployment, as you said, going up, but very slightly and still historically really low, still being under 4%, but that we're finally seeing some drops in Black unemployment for both men and women encouraging. And I think what this means is we have to look at, okay, where are the jobs that are being created, which sector? This month, we saw that there was very little job growth in the leisure, hospitality jobs, kind of like hotel, but a lot of growth in healthcare, the healthcare industry and education continue to drive a lot of the job growth we're seeing. So I would have to think that this month, given that we're seeing Black unemployment drop, it must mean that a lot of the jobs that we're getting are in the healthcare and education sectors.
Okay. Now, I know I was reading an article from NBCnews.com today about the April job numbers, and it says the evidence can be found in, well, it talks about America's job market increasingly appears to be splitting into two tracks. Economists say alongside a steady demand for skilled workers and a flagging interest in hiring more, quote unquote, knowledge-based professionals. And they talk about how the evidence can be found in the data which shows a higher unemployment rate for professional and business service workers. That's bad for people like me with business degrees, and a lower unemployment rate for people who work in manufacturing. Can you talk about that for a minute? And how does this relate to African Americans and the African American unemployment rate?
Yeah, I think there is a different economic story depending on what kind of jobs you're doing and, socioeconomic status. And so, for example, we're starting to see a lot more layoffs in some of these professional service tech sectors, but overall layoffs are not very high across the economy. And so, the fact that we're seeing the drop in unemployment among Black men and women suggests that perhaps there's a larger proportion of our population that's maybe not in those professional service jobs, but are in the other jobs where we're seeing growth, like I mentioned before, in the healthcare, education sectors. And so another data point that we saw this month is manufacturing is totally flat. And so even as we see maybe we have pretty good participation there, it doesn't seem like that's driving growth. But another reason why we probably aren't seeing as much growth in that sector is because interest rates continue to be high. For manufacturing jobs to go up, those are kind of like higher cost industries. There needs to be a lot of equipment purchase. And in this interest rate environment, it's unlikely that a lot of business, or not even unlikely, the data bears out, that it doesn't seem like businesses are making that decision. They're kind of hanging steady. And so we're not seeing the employment growth there. So, to summarize, what do we do with that? I mean, I do think that there's an ongoing need for us to continue to diversify the types of jobs that we're in a position to get. Even if we're seeing layoffs within the professional sector, those are sectors where you're going to be earning more, the opportunity for wealth building. And so we need to continue to focus on making sure people are on a track, whether it's through the proper education or credentialing, that's going to get them into management positions and be able to, see those wealth building opportunities.
All right. Well, I think this is, it's the 40th straight month of private sector job growth. either 39 or 40, and it's the 27th consecutive month that the unemployment rate was below 4%. I'm going to go to my panel quickly on this. Let's start with Teresa. Teresa, do you have any questions or comments for Morgan Harper?
Yeah, I just want you to, well, Morgan, thank you so much for those numbers, because it definitely is important as we figure out why some of the Black unemployment rates are happening. Is your sets also with those who are entering back into the workforce, like if they were formerly incarcerated? Just curious.
The data doesn't really get into that, so it's hard to say. But that would be something interesting to look into. And I think that's where we would need organizations that focus on serving that population to probably do some of their own analysis. But I haven't really seen that kind of like national analysis of looking specifically at the reentry population. I mean, another stat I mentioned that's not directly connected to that, but just in terms of like what's driving these numbers, is we have a very high labor participation rate by women. Like 78% of women are participating in the labor force. And so that's hasn't always been the case. That's something interesting for us to watch. And then again, a policy I know we've talked about before to support that labor participation is we have to have affordable childcare and continue to make sure that women, everyone, but especially to maintain that kind of high labor rate participation, we need to have some childcare behind that, given the number of women who are working and have children as well.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. And this is the 40th straight month of private sector job growth. So just so for all those thinking that Republicans are better handling the economy, the evidence does not show that. Cameron, you have a question for Morgan?
I do. Thank you again for sharing that information, Morgan. While we're seeing these numbers in generally overall positive, but we've seen inflation like going sky high and rocketing, and people are now feeling like they not only need a job, but maybe need two jobs, or the quality of the job and the wage of the job, or the jobs they're getting allow them to really have a livable wage and keep up. Can you do the numbers really dive into the types of jobs, or the types of jobs that African Americans are getting and people are getting, or if these are just jobs, or are these jobs that are or also reflective of maybe people getting more than one job? Because when you see these jobs numbers and jobless rates numbers, I think they're overall generally positive. But we know that when African Americans, when Black folks, when America gets a cold, we get the flu. And so sometimes I want to make sure our people are actually getting good jobs and jobs that can actually help them advance in America.
Absolutely. And, I was referencing this a little bit before. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I don't think that because of the industries that aren't seeing as much growth, manufacturing, some of the professional services, I mean, those are really career type of industries. It's very much possible that the industry that's leading in the job growth for this month, healthcare, for example, I think the experts say, I mean, a lot of that is home healthcare aides. Those are not necessarily jobs that are going to give you a lot of benefits. There's not necessarily a lot of job security, and that might not be putting our people on a road to, more wealth building and security overall. But it does seem like we might be overrepresented there, given that our unemployment's dropping when overall unemployment's going up. And this was the sector that drove the growth this month. All of that to be said, though, is it just 1 month? And, as I mentioned a lot when I come on the show, we can't interpret too much from just 1 month of data. We have to look at the trends. But this is definitely something for us to continue to pay attention to. And then you're absolutely right on prices. I mean, I think as a lot of us know, this administration, since the pandemic, there's been a big focus on trying to lower prices, get the inflation rate to 2%. It's still like about a percentage point off from that, but a lot lower than what other countries are seeing. I do think we have to continue to keep in mind the pandemic was this once-in-a-century event that really drove up prices in a way that nobody really expected, exposed all of these vulnerabilities in the supply chain and in the monopolies. And we have to also acknowledge there are a lot of big, I just lost one of my earbuds. There's a lot of big corporations that have been taking advantage of these once-in-a-century economic conditions to try to make as much money off of us as possible. I mean, an example there, and this is a great one because gas prices, right? That's an area where a lot of people are like, what could we possibly do to control gas prices? It's in the Middle East. It's international. It's complicated. And then this week, there was a case that came out through the Federal Trade Commission that showed executives of oil companies were colluding with OPEC to keep gas prices high. So it's very typical to just try to wave all this off. It's complicated, the economy, who knows, so many factors, when sometimes it's just people that are taking advantage of us, keeping these prices high and make it really difficult to get by with just one job. We need the government to expose this, to enforce the law when people are breaking it, and try to bring these prices down. And that has to be a top priority ongoing and moving forward.
So agree.
Absolutely.
So agree. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cameron. I had a follow-up question for you, Morgan. Looking at the article from the Washington Post today dealing with the April job numbers, employers added 175,000 jobs in April as labor market growth slows. On page 2, it says the rate of joblessness for African Americans, which spiked last month, which would be April 2024, well, the previous month, March 2024 numbers. Yeah, raising concern among policymakers, fell back to 5.6% between March and April 2024. Black workers tend to be among the most vulnerable to weaknesses in the labor market. Last year, 2023, unemployment for Black workers fell to an all-time low of 4.8% amid an exceptionally tight labor market. So can you talk about the weaknesses in the labor market that African Americans are most vulnerable to, and what are 1 or 2 or maybe 3 policies that can be implemented to address that weakness and that vulnerability?
Well, this is what we were talking about a little bit before. I mean, these numbers seem to suggest that there are vulnerabilities in the economy in layoffs and maybe job growth slowing down. But it seems to be in more of the professional services and tech kind of sectors, right? And so that's suggesting that perhaps we're not as involved in or as overly represented in those industries. I do think that's something for us to pay attention to. I mean, you know, for example, it doesn't seem like the layoffs now are hitting the sectors that they usually do. When you think of the economy slowing down, people are losing the job, you think that it's going to be retail, you think it's going to be leisure and hospitality. Some of these more like, you know, how would I say, you know, like not necessarily as permanent of positions that would be the first to go. And that's not what we're seeing right now. So in that way, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of cause for alarm. The other stat that is a positive stat that we're seeing in these numbers is that the gap between Black and white employment is very narrow. It's usually about double, but we're actually seeing that that's narrowing to 1.6 in terms of the difference. And so, in terms of the income level. So this is another positive development. In terms of policies to address this, I'm going to emphasize again, you know, it's just 1 month. And so we have to kind of continue to see. This is a very volatile economy. People haven't been that great at predicting what exactly is going on month to month. And so it's kind of like easy does it. But we know that there are some basic things that need to happen for us to be okay. We need the economy to continue to grow. It is growing. We need to make sure that we're addressing these prices, like the last question that we were just talking about, that is going to hit us more acutely because we don't have the backup of, you know, generational wealth, maybe the savings as much. And so it's very important that our wages are going as far as they can and bring the prices down and enable people to save. And then cutting out the exploitation in the economy that does hit people who are maybe, again, not as affluent. And that involves law enforcement and making sure that we are having, you know, markets. For example, I mean, here's another one I know we've talked about before as well. The grocery prices, trying to make sure that we don't have mergers that are going to raise food prices as well. This all needs to come together to create a situation where we can lead financially stable lives. And we still are on the road to getting there. Right.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Thanks for coming back on Roland Martin Unfiltered to explain that to us. Okay, we have Roland Martin here at the White House. Hello, Roland.
Morgan, don't go anywhere. I literally just stepped back into the studios at the White House for the President's Medal of Freedom. I do have a question for you, Morgan. So Vice President Kamala Harris kicked off this Black Economic Empowerment Tour in Atlanta on Monday. She's going to be in Detroit on Monday. I'm going to be traveling with her to Detroit. And one of the things that I've said to them that they also have to be talking about here, and that is you can't just be talking about contracts in Black-owned businesses. You have to bring it home as to how their policies have impacted poor and low income folks as well, and how their lives would be different. So a lot of these people keep saying, oh, my goodness, rising food prices and housing, things along those lines, which is important. But they also have to make sure to explain to people that the billions that were spent during COVID, that money is not going to be spent again, and Republicans want to attack every program that has actually benefited the most vulnerable folks in the country. I think they have to do a much better job of connecting those dots and tying that into the economy and the election. Your thoughts?
I agree. And a lot of people just aren't aware of the developments that have happened over the past 3 years from the administration. Part of that is just the media not necessarily covering it. I mean, I don't know if any of you have, I should say mainstream media. I know you're doing your part, Roland, to try to do a better job of having broader coverage. But if you tune into a lot of these typical stations over the last couple of weeks, I don't know what you're hearing about, but I'm only hearing about protests and Trump. And they're not telling the story of what the good things are that are happening in the economy. Here's an example. Last week, the Federal Trade Commission just banned non-compete agreements. And these are things that oftentimes we think, oh, those are just like high-wage workers. You sign one of those to protect trade secrets or proprietary information. No, increasingly, a lot of low, middle-income folks have been locked in non-competes, people who work in beauty salons, even at fast food restaurants, that if you were trying to go across the street and work at another fast food restaurant, you wouldn't be able to do that legally because you had to sign a non-compete to take on that job. That isn't just some esoteric thing. That means that if you're trying to go somewhere and bargain for a higher wage, you wouldn't be able to do that. The federal government just released a rule banning those agreements moving forward. And they estimate that that's going to, over the next 10 years, put $400 billion of wages back into our pockets, into workers, and also enable people to start businesses. So not just have a job, but try to start a business, build wealth, accelerate that wealth building process. That had never been done before. That wasn't contemplated by a lot of people even 5 years ago. And that happened in this administration over the past 3 years. That's the story that we need to be telling. And there's just so many examples like that. But I think especially when we look at some of these bigger legislative packages that got through, they will take a little bit of time to show that impact. So, looking at the Inflation Reduction Act, creating the incentives to invest in more of the climate industry, environmentally friendly industries, these manufacturing jobs. Like we were saying, we're still not seeing a lot of growth in those jobs because probably more of the interest rates, but the infrastructure is being built to see that benefit coming. Now, the key there, though, is having stakeholders on the ground. And that's why I'm so glad you're saying this economic tour is happening. You're a part of it, because we need to make sure that we have local elected officials on the ground that are feeling the pressure to ensure that the way these programs and policies and the tax credits get implemented are actually hitting our community, that we're getting into the workforce development programs that are going to put you on the road to a trade that will be able to earn over $100,000. That doesn't just happen by creating the program. We need to make sure that we have that pipeline and people on the ground know that that is their responsibility to get to the implementation of these once in a generation policies and make sure that we see the economic benefit from that. And so, yeah, it's a story that we have to tell, and we're going to have to be telling for ourselves. And I'm happy to continue sharing it with you because time is of the essence, as we know. But anybody who's thinking that there hasn't been any changes over these last couple of years, we need to start talking, and please reach out to me because I am happy to walk you through all of the changes we've seen and the groundwork that's been laid for a lot more to come. All
right. Sounds great, Morgan. We always appreciate you joining us, breaking down these numbers every single month. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you. Good luck in Detroit.
All right, absolutely. Folks, as I said, on Monday, Vice President Kamala Harris travels to Detroit to give us an economic speech. I will be accompanying her. We actually thought the event was on Wednesday. I got some information. And so as I was going through the line with the president, vice president, she said, so you on the trip on Monday, huh? And I'm like, where we going on Monday? And so we will be traveling with her again on Monday to Detroit. And so we will, of course, live stream her speech right here on the Black Star Network. I will be dropping in reports. I just got the notice, and we're going to be landing about 6:45. And so my goal is to be live. We'll be live at 6, but hopefully I will be able to quickly set up and go live at 7 o'clock from Andrews Air Force Base when we get back. So look forward to that coverage taking place on Monday. Got to go to break.
Article here. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the African History Network show. It's Sunday, April 28th, 2024. Also, be sure to register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Our next class is Saturday, May 4th, 2024, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have the link here in the thread of the broadcast also. And I'm going to post it here as well. Back to that. All right, now, when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, we discussed this story and the news out of the White House that Vice President Kamala Harris is going to do a economic empowerment tour. Hold on, where is that article? Just a second. Okay, right here. Let's close this ad out. Okay, so when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, April 26th, we discussed this story, this news from the White House that starting April 29th, Monday, April 29th, Vice President Kamala Harris was going on what is called a economic opportunity tour. An economic opportunity tour visiting various cities. It's going to start in Atlanta. Then the following week it's going to Detroit and it's going to other cities. Economic opportunity tour, and it is going to highlight investing in communities, highlight the work that the Biden-Harris administration has done around economics, building wealth, and ensuring African Americans have the freedom to thrive. There's a article from 11alive.com out of Atlanta called Vice President Kamala Harris to Visit Atlanta to Tout Biden Administration's Economic Wins. This is from April 25th, 2024. And I didn't even know we were going to talk about this topic. This was the first story we talked about on the show on Friday. And the show started late. So there were some things I wanted to mention that I did not get a chance to mention because we were on a tight time schedule. But Vice President Kamala Harris to visit Atlanta to tout Biden administration's economic wins. Okay, so on Thursday afternoon, the White House announced that Vice President Kamala Harris will be kicking off a nationwide tour called the Economic Opportunity Tour. Is going to start in Atlanta to highlight the work the Biden-Harris administration is doing for the economy. The vice president's first stop on the tour will be at a yet to be announced location in Atlanta on Monday, April 29th. Well, they probably have a location now, hopefully. But at the time of this article, it was yet to be determined. The series of events, according to the White House, will be focused on investing in communities, building wealth, and ensuring every American has freedom to thrive. President Biden and I, Vice President Kamala Harris said, President Biden and I are committed to creating an economy in which every person has the freedom to thrive. The Vice President said in the statement announcing the tour, our economic approach has delivered great progress, and we will continue to invest in you, your family, and your future. During the tour, and part of this tour is going to be focused on community, talking to African American men, African Americans in general, but specifically African American men. And this is something we talked about on Roland Martin Unfiltered, to highlight the economic successes, but also to connect people to economic opportunity and the resources that are available. During the tour, according to the White House, the vice president will list some of the administration's wins, including infrastructure investments, cutting the price of insulin drugs, and efforts to forgive student loan debt for some Americans. We know $153 billion has been forgiven for about 4.4 million people, and that's that's before the latest announcement that Biden made that is going to affect about 40 million people. Vice President Harris will also outline additional steps she and President Biden are taking to expand on their work. According to the White House, VP Harris has made more than 35 trips to 16 states since the beginning of 2024. Okay, she was last in Atlanta in early January 2024 to focus on protecting voting rights in the state. Okay, so read this piece here from this is from 11alive.com. This is from 11alive.com. Vice President Kamala Harris to visit Atlanta to tout Biden administration's economic wins. Now, there's a good piece at, good announcement at whitehouse.gov on this, and I want to look at that because it gives more information, and it talks about their success. And one of the things I said on the show is that this gives them an opportunity to go around the country and to claim to take responsibility for these policies that they've been able to put in place that a lot of people don't know exist, and policies that have been beneficial and have helped the economy, help with economics, but also help African Americans as well. Now, if we look here at two things. Number one, you've heard me talk a number of times about this 36-page document that's at whitehouse.gov. Everybody needs to read this, and the black social media disinformation agents are not going to tell you about this. They're not going to go through this on their show. We've been through this numerous times here. Now, this was last updated. This one here is last updated February 27, 2023. This is the 36-page one. This is a fact sheet that shows how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping the African-American community. It's called Fact Sheet. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. It goes through and takes you through policy by policy, where they talk about the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that saved the economy, where they talk about 15 million jobs created, 2.6 million of those jobs went to African Americans, where they talk about 39 straight months of private sector job growth. We know the March 2024 numbers, 303,000 jobs created, 3.8% unemployment rate. But they go through category by category, creating opportunities and good paying jobs, et cetera, and show you how these policies are helping African Americans, where they talk about the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, making critical investments in Black families and communities in the American Rescue Plan that no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for, historic expansion of the child tax credit, cutting child poverty to record lows for Black children. It lifted 1 million African American children out of poverty. Now we know that child tax credit, the way that they did it in the American Rescue Plan, we know that that was only good for 1 year and expired, but you can get it back if you take back control of the House of Representatives and go from 51 Democrats in the Senate. If you go to like 55, then you can change the filibuster or get rid of the filibuster altogether. Okay, so you can get it back. That made a tremendous difference. Supporting child care providers and reducing child care costs for Black families. The American Rescue Plan provided a $39 billion lifeline to help child care providers stay open and compensate early childhood educators as they provide safety and healthy environments for children and help parents. So read the rest of that. So they go through category by category. The American Rescue Plan tripled the earned income tax credit for 17 million workers without dependent children. Okay. They talk about things like $7 billion invested in HBCUs, $7 billion allocated for HBCUs, $5.8 billion in 2021. There's been a record amount of funding for HBCUs under the Biden-Harris administration, ensuring Black homeowners get full value for their homes, et cetera. Okay, so go through and read this. This is a 36-page document at whitehouse.gov. It takes you through policy by policy and shows you how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping African Americans. Now, overwhelmingly, Republicans are against these policies or voted against them overwhelmingly. And even when you look at the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that 19 Republicans in the House and 19 Republicans in the Senate and 14 Republicans in the House voted for, that's 34 Republicans, but that's out of approximately 240, 250 Republicans that were in office in the House and the Senate, combination of the House and the Senate. 50 were in the Senate, okay? Out of about 250 Republicans, only 34 voted for the infrastructure bill, even though many Republicans want to take credit for infrastructure dollars coming to their districts or coming to their states, even though they overwhelmingly voted against the bill. Imagine that. All right, now, the announcement at whitehouse.gov is this one right here. Let's go to this. Vice President Kamala Harris launches nationwide economic tour. Okay, this is from this is a press release, April 25th, 2024. Okay, the vice president will kick off her multi-state tour with a moderated conversation in Atlanta, Georgia, on April 29th, and an event in Detroit, Michigan during the following week. Okay, so it talks about economic opportunity tour, and then it goes and let's see. Okay, it has a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris that I already read. Let's go to, I want to go to the next, okay, right here. During the vice president's economic opportunity tour, she will highlight how the Biden-Harris administration has delivered historic investments that have supported communities and helped people thrive. This includes making unprecedented investments in small businesses and achieving the fastest creation of Black-owned small businesses in more than 30 years, creating a record number of jobs. So it's over 15 million jobs now, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 2.6 million of the 15 million have gone to African Americans, which is about 17%. Okay. Increasing access to capital for underserved communities, investing in infrastructure, cutting the price of insulin, and expanding access to healthcare. So you have about 41 million people now who have Obamacare, a record number. Okay. A huge success, and many African Americans now have health care who didn't historically have it, didn't have it before the Affordable Health Care Act. Forgiving more student loan debt, erasing medical debt, forgiving more student loan debt than any administration in history, and boosting investments in education, making housing more affordable, lowering child care costs, and increasing the wealth of African American families. So we've seen median household net worth for African Americans increase by 60% under the Biden-Harris administration. Vice President Harris will also outline additional steps that she and President Biden are taking to expand this work. She will be joined on the tour by administration officials, members of Congress, local leaders, and other special guests. Now, what they have accomplished, compare that to what Republicans are talking about, how Republicans have voted and the policies Republicans support, because overwhelmingly Republicans voted against these policies, okay, or are against these policies. Now, the vice president's tour is a continuation of her nonstop travel to communities across the country. And let's see here. Let's go right here. She has made more than 35 trips to 16 states since the beginning of 2024. This includes, and I encourage people to follow Vice President Kamala Harris on Instagram as well as Joe Biden. Go to, if you just follow, because you got all these dumbasses out here who say things like she's not doing anything, she doesn't say anything. That's a blatant lie. Okay? If you just go to Instagram and follow VP on Instagram, if all you did was look at pictures and watch video clips, you will get an education on what's taking place. Okay, she has not been silent. What happens is a lot of the white media does not cover Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, that's what's happening. A lot of the white media does not cover Vice President Kamala Harris. TheGrio.com does better coverage. April Ryan for TheGrio.com does better coverage than a lot of mainstream media does in covering Vice President Kamala Harris. She has made more than 35 trips to 16 states since the beginning of 2024. This includes consistent travel to meet with small business owners and entrepreneurs in underserved communities to discuss challenges and opportunities they face. In March, she traveled to Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina, because there was a Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina also. The one in Tulsa was not the only one. To announce $32 million in funds to support historically underserved entrepreneurs. She began the year in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she announced a small business administration rule, an SBA rule that will ensure millions of Americans, now pay attention to this, that will ensure millions of Americans who have served time, who have prison records, who have felonies, are eligible for small business administration loan programs that help individuals start and run small businesses. Okay, who has heard about this? The vice president has long been focused on ensuring that minority, rural, and low-income communities have the capital and resources they need to thrive and support small businesses. Last year, she announced that the Treasury's Community Development Financial Institutions, the CDFIs, the CDFI Fund has awarded over $1.73 billion in grants to 603 community development financial institutions, CDFIs, across the country. Let's see here. Let's go down. Let's skip down here. You can read the rest of this here. Okay, read the rest of that. That's at whitehouse.gov. April 25th, 2024. Vice President Kamala Harris launches nationwide economic opportunity tour. So it's coming to Detroit. I need to see where it is in Detroit because I want to go to that. I want to go to that one. There is this good piece here. I think we talked about this before briefly. This is from December 20th, 2023. This is at whitehouse.gov. Now, that's the official website of the White House. So all the press releases, transcripts of speeches that President Biden gives, updates on what's going on with the administration, policies coming from the administration, what Vice President Kamala Harris is doing. That's all at whitehouse.gov. And you can go to the White House's YouTube channel, which is White House on YouTube, and watch their speeches, things of this nature. Because a lot of that, especially a lot of what Vice President Kamala Harris is doing, white controlled media and cable news largely is not covering. Joanne Reed may talk about it. Reverend Al Sharpton may talk about it. But a lot of that stuff is not covered in cable news. Okay, this one right here, you could take a look at. This covers a lot of the economic success when it comes to small businesses. This is, let me pull this up. President Biden now, this is from December 2023. President Biden to highlight how his investing in America agenda has led to a Black small business boom. Okay, check this out here. This is at whitehouse.gov also. Let's go over to this. From December 20th, 2023, fact sheet, President Biden to highlight how his investing in America agenda has led to a Black small business boom. And in here, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it talked about Biden visiting the Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce. Okay. Says today, President Biden will visit the Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce to highlight how Bidenomics is helping drive a Black small business boom and announce new investments in Milwaukee and communities across the country. Under President Biden's leadership, the United States is on track to have the the 3 strongest years in history for new small business applications, and with Black business ownership growing at the fastest pace in 30 years. With Black business ownership growing at the fastest pace in 30 years. Okay, now if we skip down here, it talks about while President Biden highlights historic investments from his administration to support small businesses, including Black-owned businesses, extreme Republicans in Congress have repeatedly tried to dismantle the president's small business agenda. Every single Republican opposed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which helped small businesses stay afloat during the pandemic and spurred a record small business boom. Okay, many Republicans in Congress, including Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, who spreads a bunch of conspiracy theories, opposed the bipartisan infrastructure law. They also want to repeal key provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act that are lowering healthcare costs, lowering prescription drug costs, and lowering energy costs. President Biden will continue fighting for opportunity for working families and small business owners, while Republicans in Congress want to return to failed trickle-down economics that for too long left too many communities behind. Okay, now it goes on to say, let's look at this. Investing in Black entrepreneurship and opportunity. Okay, so they talk about the Hero Plumbing company in, I think that was the one in Wisconsin. It's a Black-owned small business in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that is removing lead pipes in Milwaukee. Okay, now since taking office, Americans have filed a record 15 million applications to start new businesses. Black business ownership is growing at the fastest pace in 30 years, and the share of Black households owning a business has doubled between 2019 and 2022 after falling between 2007 and 2019. When Black businesses do well, they create jobs, generate wealth in their local communities, and make the broader economy stronger. As a result, Black wealth is up a record 60% from before the pandemic, and Black unemployment has reached historic lows. So we know in 2023, the unemployment rate for African Americans reached the lowest it's been since 1972. And 1972 is when they started keeping track of the unemployment rate by race. The administration's investment in Black entrepreneurs is producing results, including nearly $70 billion, a new record in fiscal year 2022 on federal contracts awarded to small disadvantaged businesses, $12 billion in community lenders to expand access to capital and resources to too often sidelined entrepreneurs. The U.S. Department of Treasury estimates that these investments in community lenders will result in a $50 billion increase in lending to Latino communities and a nearly $80 billion increase in lending to Black communities over the next decade. $10 billion in states, tribes, and territories to launch and expand capital access programs for roughly 100,000 small businesses, including $79 million in Wisconsin. Then they talk about new investments in small business growth and local communities across the country. Okay, so you can read that as well. And then I want to go to the next segment here. Today's announcements. This is from, once again, this update is from December 20th, 2023. Today's announcements build on historic progress and investments in Black-owned businesses. So it outlines the American Rescue Plan is supporting small business, including Black-owned small businesses in Wisconsin and around the country through a $10 billion investment, including $79 million in Wisconsin to help small businesses access the capital that they need. Then they talk about, let's see here, the largest ever dedicated federal investment to connect minority small businesses to support. Hold on, did I skip something here? Okay, we got that. Yeah, the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Community Navigators pilot program provided $100 million in funding to 51 organizations, including the U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce and the National Urban League, that worked with local groups to connect entrepreneurs to resources to help their small businesses recover and thrive. A recent Small Business Administration analysis shows that community navigators provided training and counseling to more than 350,000 small businesses, and roughly 43% of the businesses served were Black-owned businesses. Roughly 43% of the businesses served were Black-owned businesses. The largest ever direct federal investment in small business incubators and accelerators. Okay, read that as well. They talk about delivering $150 million in support for small businesses in Wisconsin. And President Biden's Small Business Administration delivered $50 billion to small businesses in fiscal year 2023, with a major increase in support for underserved businesses, including Black-owned businesses. Since 2020, the share of Small Business Administration's loan portfolio going to minority-owned businesses has increased from 23% to 32%. The number and dollar value of SBA-backed loans to Black-owned businesses has more than doubled since 2020. Then they talk about achieving record federal contract spending on small disadvantaged businesses. In 2022, the Biden-Harris administration awarded a record-breaking $163 billion in federal procurement opportunities to small businesses. This is why they said that. Okay, read the rest of that. Then they talk about the CHIPS and Science Act, supporting small and disadvantaged businesses through CHIPS Act funding. Okay, there's more you can read. I don't have time to get through all this. Read the rest of that. And okay, they also talk about supporting small and minority-owned businesses in clean energy industries. All right, so read that. And those are going to be some of the things Vice President Kamala Harris talks about, but also connecting people to the resources, telling them how to take advantage of resources already allocated. All right, now, let me post this link here also. Okay, so we got that. Read this article here from the Associated Press. This talks about a surge in wealth has boosted most U.S. households. This deals with what I was talking about and dealing with African-American wealth. A surge in wealth has boosted most U.S. households since 2020 and helped sustain economic growth. This is from the Associated Press, October 18th, 2023. October 18th, 2023. The part I want to focus in on, you can read the whole thing, but the part I want to focus in on is on the second page. It deals with how households' net worth rose more on a percentage basis for Black and Hispanic households than for white ones. Where is this here? Hold on. Okay. Household net worth rose more on a percentage basis for Black and Hispanic households than for white ones. Though measured in dollar terms, the disparities remained wide. Yeah, we know, because you're dealing with 246 years of slavery and decades of Jim Crow segregation and redlining, housing discrimination, etc., things like this. The median net worth for Black households jumped 60%, but remained comparatively low at $45,000. Okay, but we see a 60% increase in median net worth of Black households. For Hispanic households, the figure surged to 47% to nearly $62,000. Among white households, median household net worth rose 31% to $285,000. So you want median net worth for African-American households to increase so we can close that racial wealth gap. It's not about taking something away from white people. It's about increasing opportunities for African-Americans. The Federal Reserve survey found that even as wealth inequality declined, income disparities worsened. Median incomes grew 3% compared with the previous survey, which covered 2017 through 2019. Okay. All right. But average incomes, which are swollen by the earnings of the wealthiest 1/10 of households, jumped 15%. Okay. Average incomes jumped 15%. The outsized gain among the richest households was driven by profits on stock and property holdings, as well as higher wages. So read the rest of this article here from the Associated Press. A surge in wealth has boosted most U.S. households since 2020 and helped sustain economic growth. Now, most of these policies Republicans are against that created all this. Most of these policies Republicans are against. So it's not only about what somebody can do for you, a politician can do for you, it's also about protecting gains that have been made, and it's about blocking and stopping what people are trying to do to you. This deals with understanding political self-defense, which is a whole concept that I teach, political self-defense. Now, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network a few ways. Be sure to register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. This is a 10-week class. We're doing more than 10 weeks this time around. Next classes are Saturday, May 4th, Saturday, May 11th, Saturday, May 18th, and Saturday, May 25th, 2024, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click right here to register here for the class. The class is on sale $60, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it any time. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can still watch the entire course. We have the lesson plan here for the entire course also already laid out, so you can look at the content that we cover. We deal with 80 to 100 articles. And I put together this class. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017. Okay. I've been studying history 34 years now, do lectures across the country, been hosting the African History Network show 14 years. But we look at, there's over 200 slides that I put together, 80 to 100 articles that we'll go through and look at. The 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. I'll show you excerpts of the books on the screen usually. And we'll look at video clips of interviews I've done with historians like Professor James Small, Professor Kabahai Wapakamane, Anthony Browder, who wrote Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, which is one of the books we use in the class, Runoko Rashidi, who wrote Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe, which is another book that we use in the class, okay? So you can register for this. This content is PG-13. You can use this information with your children as well. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. And we'll post the link here. The link's in the thread of this broadcast. And you can support us through PayPal and Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN show. So we have the information right here on our website as well. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. These are fake African History Network Cash App accounts here that have been stealing money from us. There are a few other ones out there I've identified. I'm still trying to get them shut down. You can click right here on our link and it shows our QR code, okay, for Cash App. This helps us stay on the air, keep doing the research, pay some of the bills, etc.